Hello again, this is Sketchbook number 2. This cracks off with going straight into researching kites. I had thought a lot about the fact that I really did not want to go through fences again, and the idea of kites and being free felt really interesting to me, and kites have such symbolic history, and going back through Asian culture, they mean so many different things, different the different dynasties and the different years and the legends and myths behind them and what they were actually used for is so incredibly interesting that I could read about it all freaking day. I've made some rather scrolly notes about the different uses they were for, and all of these things are notes that I used within different... No, I'm getting ahead of myself. So all of these are different things that are just, quite frankly, things I never knew. People used and made kites that could fly men, which seems absolutely crazy. And they also replaced horses with kites to avoid fines and paying tax, which is quite frankly the human way, to find ways to avoid just about everything. After reading about all of this and many more books on kites, basically, kites are cool. I looked slightly into the science of kites. I'm not very sciencey, but in order to be able to build them, I did have to know some of the engineering. Again, more into kites, and one point that I really liked about kite culture is that there are so many different types of kites, and specifically a carpfish and I cannot pronounce it to save my life, so I'm not going to butcher it. But this kite represents an ornamental fish called carp or koi, and it's shaped like a fish. And basically, all of the parents fly them because they want their children to grow up healthy and happy and to lead a full life, which I think is just so very beautiful and poetic in itself, that just having the symbolism there of your parents flying a fish lets you know how much they care about you and like how far back you can go and see them depicted in different murals and tapestries, and that's the meaning of them. It's people caring for each other, which is really what my work is all about. Looking into kites, I was looking into different artists, and Rebecca Horn, obviously, is someone I was very drawn to. There's lots and lots to read about her work. Sorry, excuse the light, I'm filming this in the morning, so the lighting is going to change horribly. I really enjoy the way she uses her work as an extension of her body, as that is generally what I'm aiming to do. So whenever I think about making kites, I think about the people I'm going to be making them with, and I came up with the concept of, I'll come back to Jeremy Deller, basically making kites and using them as symbolism, I guess, for kids to explore their boundaries and to be able to have a very tangible way of understanding them. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to go in and speak to children in schools and and first of all teach them about kites. Started off like that, and then I wanted to speak to them about boundaries. I wanted to go in to high schools and primary schools and lots of different ages, but primarily I wanted to work with children from the ages of 13 to 17. At that point in your life, you are really quite confused. You're told that you're an adult, but you're not an adult. And you have so many different things going on. People trust you with certain things, but not other things. And there are so very many complex relationships that are evolving and you don't know how to handle them yet. People have crushes, people are having sex. It's a lot to handle. And there are all of these new boundaries that are suddenly in place. You don't really know where you're allowed to go anymore, what you're supposed to do. So being able to go in and speak to them and not necessarily be an authority figure, I found works really well. I worked with children, and when I was in my 6th year of school, I went in and taught PSE lessons about mental health, and I was part of a big school-wide initiative to sort of make everything more accessible. And the children responded a lot more to us because we weren't grown-ups. We understood what was going on. It's you kind of get it because you're not in charge of us. You go through the same things. You're not that much older. And I feel like I can speak to you because you're not going to get someone in trouble if we've fallen out and she's been mean to me, but I don't want to tell on her, and all of different social dynamics. Anyway, I digress. I wanted to get them to evaluate boundaries, whether they're good or bad, or basically just talk about them. And this is where Jeremy Deller comes in. I absolutely love the man. The different ways in which he explores his ideas, and it's all about the human aspect, just excite me. And the fact that he likes to stay so approachable, and just this beautiful quote about him wanting to be in a bike helmet because that's what he is. He's just a man that unfortunately is always in a bike helmet and rides around London in it. So if people see him, that's how he's going to be. And it's that aspect of relatability that I want to still manage to have, which is why I want to have a really frank conversation with these kids and treat them as adults and actually listen to their problems and get their ideas. And when I mentioned this to David, he mentioned Everybody in the Place, which I actually hadn't seen, which is such a wonderful, wonderful film. And getting kids and getting them to work and just let them touch and play with the very thing you're talking about and get their ideas on board and have a laugh with them gets them to interact so much more than if you just go in and talk to them about it or show them in a gallery, which is kind of where all of this comes in. So I wanted to take them outside, and once they have their kites, I want them to close their eyes. Initially, I started off this project wanting to look at the way people with disabilities navigate the world and their boundaries, and I spoke to lecturers about it and decided that was much too broad a spectrum again for me to be looking at, and that I should focus on one sense, and I chose sight. We are very, very sight-based animals. It's our primary sense, and without it, the world is completely different. We don't know how to function. It's scary. And it really is, and that's something that I really do hope to go on and explore more. I had reached out to the blind school in Edinburgh and was going to go and do workshops with them over summer, but due to COVID-19, that is no longer happening. But I digress. Basically, the idea was to have them close their eyes and feel the movement in the strings the way that if you close your eyes, you can feel the bass in the air with music. The same way deaf people do, that's how they experience music. If we can't see the kite and we need to control it, what do? We have to feel it. And it's that tangibility that I really, really wanted to hold on to within the project. Having them be able to feel the way their kite is moving and how erratic it is, and if it's going to crash, they can feel that even though they can't see it. And that is often how, well, that just is how your emotions are. You can feel them, but you can't see them. They're real, but they're not there. They're invisible. And when you're around other people, you need to be so very wary of what you're doing, not only with your emotions, but you need to be wary of what other people are doing with theirs. And that is where the kites really come into play quite well, because let's be real, everyone is their own special little snowflake. Your life literally revolves around you. And as much as we don't love it, everyone is selfish. Like, you think about yourself and then you learn to think about other people, and it's nice when you do. But children especially can sometimes forget, because there is so much going on in your world and your brain. It's a lot. I don't know how to explain this very well. I'm very nervous. And basically, the idea is to get them all outside, to have their kites, their own boundaries, good, bad, whatever they wanted. They got to choose what they were bringing out into the world, and to all find their own space away from everyone else. Fly their kite, feel it, feel the way it moves, and get used to it. See if they can control them or not. It's a kite, it's going to do what it wants, and dependent on the wind, it might not even fly. But then I want them to come together and fly their kites all at once. And basically their reaction should be that they can't do that, because they'll knock each other down. And that's exactly what I want them to say. I want them to realise that they need to be so very aware of not only what their kite is doing, but what other people's kites are doing, because if you're not careful and if you're reckless, it'll take everyone down. So that's basically the plan. I started thinking that I need to go to schools, and then the pandemic happened. So I got very stressed. Again, running commentary of my thoughts. Thinking of what I want to do with them and why I like them. And I came to the point that I like the way they dance in the sky. And the more I thought about that, the more I thought of how very fitting it was to say that they dance. Because dancing also is something that, especially, I guess, in organised dancing anyway, there are rules and you follow them, and if you break them, you mess up everything. And while sometimes that's okay and it's fun, sometimes you get hurt. So I thought they went hand in hand beautifully. Again, I spoke to David and Michael, and I came up with a to-do list to do some drawings of my kites in the sky and maybe document them, get some people to dance for me, and somehow combine the two. And this is what I ended up with. We had different mappings of different kites, flights, different sizes, and different materials, some of which did not work very well. And then I tried to fly them all together, and as you can see, it created a chaos essentially, but I quite enjoyed that. I then went on to track more and more, and the more I tracked them, the more I enjoyed the lines that they were making and the pathways they were making. And I thought it would be really interesting to have people dance and choreograph themselves along these routes, which is what I did. Surprise. So basically, this is me explaining that I did some dancing with my colleagues, Verity and Rona, and they are linked in to other videos on the YouTube page, which hopefully you find, because that's where this is going, so I really hope so. Going with the dancing, I loved the way they moved and allowing them to choreograph themselves and just feel whatever music they wanted to feel worked really, really, really well, actually. And it came out with some beautiful, beautiful things. And at first I tried drawing, hang on, sorry, bear with. Oh, it's not in that pile, hang on. We're back. First I tried drawing them individually, and I found them to be really, really stiff. So I tried doing different body parts, which I actually quite enjoy. The isolation of the body parts, the feet especially, but I think that is just because I enjoy drawing feet. And then faces, but what I found these were lacking was, number one, there is no motion in them. They feel disjointed and disconnected from what's actually happening, the actual act, and they in no way mimic the kite's path. You can't see that, there is no relation. I tried to make them bigger and smaller and do different shapes and forms. I tried to make it like a linear timeline, and things just didn't work. I even tried to remove parts of it to see if that looked better. It didn't. I still, whilst I enjoy the shapes that they were making, they're too static. Which is when I tried to layer them. And this is where I found that actually I've started to capture some movement here. And then these are again stills. I thought if I changed medium, they might work better. Again, I really enjoy the snapshots in time, but they lack movement. It's like they're standing still. So what I eventually did was I got big, massive pieces of paper and drew them on there, overlapping and in different colours, signifying different people. And they're beautiful. They became a series called Shall We Dance, which was the girls dancing with different activities mimicking the way kites move and going through different ways of invading and respecting boundaries, moving across a room and exploring the space. So we combined the concept of the kite flying workshop and the pathways of the kites to make this. Something that is a little more easy to relate to. The kites works wonderfully if you do the tasks and you go through the workshop and you're in a group and you get to speak to people, but when it's one-on-one, people find it a lot harder to imagine. Whereas if you describe it as dancing, something everyone, no matter if you're good or not, has practice in and has done, it's so much easier to understand or relate to. So that's what I did. And again, the plan for this was for an exhibition for me to do a live performance and live drawing to capture the way in which the girls move and link it to the kite workshop with the poem that I previously had in my other sketchbook about being free. We had to think of a way to revamp that, which slowly, this is more just sort of my thoughts, really. One-to-one chats with David, explaining kind of where I'm going, graduates and residents, GERS, different ideas, different things I could do, just my thoughts and feelings that I'm pleased with what I'm doing right now. And this is where I have decided that I need to do an artist book, because if I can't have people come to the art, I need to bring the art to people. And this is my plan. This is where I started to feel I had to get really organised. These were the book stills. I played around with the idea of making my own font. I then realised I have terrible handwriting and that would be a very bad plan. I'm reiterating the fact there's been a change of plan, because I at first had decided I was going to make a PDF out of my sketchbook, and now here I am rambling over it. So these are me rethinking the workshops on how I could do them. What I actually ended up doing was doing a socially distanced workshop in my village. I have come home to self-isolate, and there's a lot of children. They are not the right age, and it was very hectic. But I made kites, and I got to speak to people and show people my artwork. So whether it's what I had planned to do or not, it's good experience, and it's useful, yeah. These are different lists again, really. So my idea for the exhibition was I had planned to make a sculpture with all of the kite strings I would have collected from the workshops in schools, and I planned to hang them because I was thinking that whilst in exhibition it's really fun to have a kite making workshop, and I was very excited to do that and have the live performance of the dancers and drawing them. They don't link very nicely, and if I'm not there to run the workshops all of the time, there is nothing really left there of the kites, because at this point I hadn't planned to make a book. So my idea was to take all of the strings from the kites I made and turn them into this cube of string, basically, in which I wanted to invite people to dance, to feel free and feel like they don't have responsibilities, basically. and play in the work. I didn't want my exhibition spaces to be serious. I wanted them to be fun and interactive and for people to touch them and add to them themselves. So you could add string, you could take string, you could literally destroy it if you wanted to. But all I wanted people to do was dance. In the end, the idea of the artist book actually really enhanced my work. I feel the end product, which is linked in a PDF, is really nice. It brings the workshop into a physical form, and it allows people to do it wherever. There is my instructions. It says in the book you can ignore them if you like, but it allows the dance aspect and the kite making aspect to come together, and you see them as one. And my two outcomes really flow nicely together, even though they're not things in the real world, really. I have a mock-up of my sculpture and an artist book, and then I have drawings of me capturing moment of dance. But I had a workshop, so I technically, it's not physical, but it's an outcome. This was me having a bit of a stress and a breakdown, not gonna lie. Which is very sad. And I did think about just not including this, but my work feels very personal to me, and I wanted it to be known that this was not a fun time, basically. But I did it, and the things I've learned through it may not have been things that I would have learned, but they are useful. Again, this is after my social distancing workshop. This is me discussing the pros, the cons, everything that happened. Again, another stress. And this was me kind of explaining what I've made and what I was going to make and kind of where it's come from, which I guess is kind of the whole book, but hey. These are referenced in, and like you have actual pictures of them in, and the videos in links, and everything should be in the Dropbox. Yeah, and then ta-da, I guess.